Miss Wright with your science lesson for the day, and in today's lesson we are going to be looking at habitats. Let me just open up what you've got at home and we'll get started. Okay then, first of all, what is a habitat? Turn to the person you're working with and tell them, what do you think a habitat is? I'll give you a couple of seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay then, so what is a habitat? Now, a home is a safe place for humans to live. It shelters us from the weather, it protects us from predators and enemies, it provides us with a safe place to have our children, and sometimes it's even a place for us to store our food. So homes serve us the same purposes as what a habitat does for animals. So an animal's living place is called a habitat. So a habitat is where an animal lives. Now, different plants and animals require different living conditions. So goldfish need fresh water, whales need seawater, things like that. Animals don't have homes like we do. They might live in a den or a burrow or somewhere like that in the ground. Animals and plants are adapted. Now, what do you think adapted might mean? Now, an adaptation is a special skill which helps an animal to survive and do what they need to where they are. So adaptations could be physical changes like a thick coat or sharp claws, something like that, or it could be something how their behaviour changes to suit where they're living. So most animals are only adapted to live in one or two different habitats. A walrus could not live in the desert, for example. A rattlesnake could not live for very long in the Arctic. Now then, let's have a look at the different animals on the screen. Where do you think these animals might live? What do you think their habitat might be? Now, I know from our research that a polar bear lives in the Arctic. They live on the ice and the snow. They have burrows underground where they have their children. I also know that things like camels live in the desert, somewhere warm. And I know that squirrels tend to live in our back gardens in trees. Are there any there that you know where they live? Okay, then the first habitat we're going to have a look at is a desert habitat. Now, desert habitats are incredibly hot and dry places, but some animals and plants can survive there. Desert covers more than 1/3 of the world's land and are very hot and dry or cold. Deserts have very dry conditions, which are usually less than 10 inches per year of rain and a wide temperature range. The dry air leads to wide daily temperature from freezing at night to over 120 degrees during the day, so that's really warm. But you also know that places like the Arctic are a desert because nothing grows there. So desert animals have many adaptations. Can you remember we learnt what that word means? How an animal changes to survive in a habitat to help them survive in the desert climate. Many are nocturnal, which means that they are active during the nighttime rather than the hot daylight. Some of these animals are burrowers, morning wheat ears, and horned vipers. There are also insects, arachnids, reptiles, and birds. Now, on every one of these pages about habitats, I've also included a BBC Bite-size link. Now, if we click onto this, it will take us over to a page to watch a short video. Okay, then when you press that link, it will send you over to BBC Bite-size, where we're going to have a little look about a desert habitat. Let's watch together.
We are here. But have you ever wondered what plants and animals live in a desert and how they survive there? This is the Sahara, the largest desert on Earth. Wow, it looks like it hardly ever rains here. Incredibly, there are still plants growing here, like this acacia tree. It has long thorns that hold water, plus very deep roots in the ground that gets the water it needs to survive. And animals too. A camel. What's with a hump? It stores fat in that hump to use as food and can survive for up to 7 months without drinking water. Oh, they must get so thirsty. Look at that gecko. They don't blink, so have to lick their eyes to keep them clean. And that's a scorpion. It can survive for 12 months without any food. It must be starving. Amazing. So, desert habitats are dry and have very little water. Oh, I'm thirsty. I need a drink.
Now then, after that video, there are also some short games that you might want to play as well.
Choose the animals that live in a desert habitat.
Okay then, now we've watched that video, we can start to have a little bit more of a look at the animals that live in the desert habitat. So like in that video, we looked at geckos and lizards, okay? And the desert horned lizard is adapted to very hot temperatures because it has horns behind its head and thick scales which keep the heat out. So that's a really good adaptation that the lizard has had to make to survive in the desert habitat. We've also got things like tarantulas. So they live underground to cope with the heat, so it's much cooler under there, and they hunt at night when it's much cooler too. We've also got camels, so their hair reflects the sun, which helps to keep them cool. And as we've learned in that video, they don't keep water in their humps, but they keep fat in their humps for them to eat so they can survive for longer periods of time. We've also got things like a vulture. So a vulture is a large bird, and they save energy in the hot desert by soaring with their huge wings rather than flapping. So rather than burning energy by flapping, they soar. And lastly, we've got the scorpion at the end here. Now, they have an exoskeleton, which means their skeleton is on the outside of their body, which helps them keep water in their bodies to survive in the harsh temperatures. Now then, what I've got here is a spider diagram with my desert habitat in the middle. What I would like you to do is come up with 4 different facts that you can put in the different areas around the picture. I just want 4 of your favourite facts and then come back to me when you're done. Okay, then you're back, which must mean you are finished. Now, the next habitat we're going to have a little bit of a look at is a polar habitat. Now, we know lots about this already because it's something we've been looking at in our topic, coldlands. Now, we know that a tundra is a cold, treeless area. The tundra is characterised by low temperatures and very little precipitation, so little rain or snow, very cold. A short growing season and few nutrients. There's not very nutrients in the ground to help things to grow. There are 2 types of tundras, an Arctic tundra and an alpine tundra. Now, Arctic tundras are frozen and windy desert-like plains in the Arctic that are dotted with bogs and ponds. Permafrost, or a layer of frozen soil, covers the ground, so there's very little drainage of water, so water sits on the surface. The short growing season only lasts for 50 to 60 days, so we know that not very many things grow in the Arctic, but there are some plants that can make their way through, and we'll learn a little bit about that later in the week. An alpine tundra are located high in the mountains, so across the world above the tree line. The growing season is about 180 days and nighttime temperatures are usually below freezing and the soil is well drained. Okay, so it's very different to the Arctic tundra because the water sits on the top, whereas in an alpine tundra, the water can make its way through the soil. Now, like what we did with the desert, there's also a short link here to follow to look at the Arctic. Let's do that together.
We are here. But have you ever wondered what plants and animals live in a polar habitat and how they survive in the cold? Well, wrap up warm. We're off to the Arctic Circle to find out. Oh, it looks really cold here. There are not many plants that can grow here as all the water is frozen, but this small bank of moss survives by growing close to the ground, keeping it out of the freezing wind. And there's an animal here that only lives in the Arctic, but I think it's hiding. There it is, a polar bear. Its thick fur helps it to hide and keep warm in the freezing cold. Plus an Arctic fox. It can hear its prey deep under the snow. And a bird, the snowy owl. They nest on the ground as there are no trees. And what about the South Pole on the other side of the Earth? What will we find in Antarctica? Oh, it looks even colder here. Wow, a plant is growing here too. Lichen. One of the ways it survives is by taking water directly from the ice. A seal sitting on the ice. They have lots of fat under their skin that keeps them warm. A penguin off to look for food. They're only found here in the south. They're birds, but can't fly. Really good swimmers, though. So, polar habitats are cold, windy, and covered in snow and ice. Oh, I'm off to find a radiator.
And again, we've got a short sorting game underneath it if you'd like to have a turn.
Choose the animals that live in an Arctic habitat.
Okay then, now we've watched that all together, let's have a bit of a deep dive into the animals that live in a polar habitat. Now, the first animal, we know lots about this one, is a polar bear. We know that they have a layer of blubber beneath their skin to keep them warm. There's also the Arctic fox. So Arctic foxes have the warmest fur on the planet. They have a round body and short legs and short ears and a big bushy tail which is used as a blanket. We've also got a walrus. So they have a thick layer of fat called blubber beneath their skin to keep them warm, so very similar to the polar bear. Then we've got a husky. Now huskies have thick double coats to protect them from the harsh weather. And lastly, we've got a seal. So they have a thick layer of blubber as well, similar to the walrus and the polar bear. So baby seals are born with thick fur to keep them warm. This thins as seals get fatter. Now, again, we've got a similar sort of setup to what we did to the desert habitat. I've given you a picture of a polar habitat and I'd like you to write 4 of your favourite facts about the polar habitat around them. It could be about the animals that live there and how they've adapted to live in that surrounding. It could be about the temperatures, whatever you like. Off you go. You're back. Okay, the next habitat we're going to have a little bit of a look at is an ocean habitat. Now, over 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and most of that includes marine habitats. Marine habitats have water that contain a lot of salt, so we call it salt water. Temperatures in marine habitats are different depending on where in the world they are. Water can be below 0 degrees Celsius, so it's normal freezing point around polar regions, but up to 30 degrees in the tropics, that's much, much warmer. The different water temperatures mean that fish and plants had to adjust to living in those different conditions. So how we were talking about those adaptations that animals have to make to live in their habitat. So if you suddenly moved from the cold polar water to warm tropical water, they wouldn't be very happy because their bodies aren't equipped to deal with it. Now, creatures who live in marine habitats can breathe underwater, so using their gills, or can hold their breath for a long period of time and just come up to the surface every now and again for air. Let's follow the link again and have a little bit of a look at ocean habitats.
We are here. But have you ever wondered what plants and animals live in the ocean and how they survive underwater? Well, pack your swimsuit. We're off to find out. Look at all these fish. Big fish, small fish, and so many colours. And there's seaweed growing here. Doesn't it look like a plant? But it's an algae. Seaweed grows close to the surface because it uses the sun to make its own food, just like a plant. And what's that? It's lots and lots of plankton. Plankton is made up of tiny plants and animals. These plants are at the beginning of most of the ocean's food chains. Look, a right whale having its dinner. Whales are the biggest animals in the world, and most only eat plankton, one of the smallest. They must have to eat a lot. They can stay underwater for an hour, but come to the surface to breathe. So, ocean habitats are large and wet. Oh, I'm off to find a boat.
Again, there is a small sorting game underneath it if you want to have a go. Okay then, you know the drill. This time you've got an ocean habitat image in the middle, and I'd like you to surround it with 4 of your favourite facts about an ocean habitat. Again, it could be about the animals or the plants that live there. It could be about the food chains. It could be how animals adapt to live in this habitat. Off you go. You're back, we're onto our final habitat, which is a woodland habitat. Now, animals and insects live in the forest and woodland habitats. They rely on trees to give them what they need. So shelter, food, protection from creatures higher up the food chain. They also use streams and ponds within forests to get water. And if they're the sort of animal that eats them, there's fish in there too. Animals that live in forests and woodlands include big animals like bears and moose and deer, but also smaller animals like hedgehogs, raccoons and rabbits. Let's follow the link to watch a short video.
Have you ever wondered what plants and animals live in woodland habitats? Well, pack your walking boots. We're off to the woods. Oh, it's very green here. There are so many trees here, like this oak tree. They can live for hundreds of years and are home to many animals, birds, and insects. This giant oak tree would have grown from a tiny acorn, like this one. Squirrels love to eat acorns. In the autumn, squirrels dig holes and store acorns ready for winter. And over there, a badger. Badgers live underground, and their houses are called setts. Their stripes look like moonlit shadows. These help them to hide at night. So, woodland habitats are green and shady. I need some sunlight.
And again, underneath you've got a short sorting game if you'd like to have a go. Okay, let's have another look at the animals that live in a woodland habitat. First of all, we've got the fox. So foxes have adapted to their urban lifestyle by building their dens under garden sheds and hedgerows. So lots of you might have seen a fox before in your back garden. We've then got a badger. So badgers have strong limbs and sharp claws that help them dig burrows and find food underground. So that's how they've adapted to live in a woodland habitat, by having those sharp claws. We've then got mice. So they can live in forests, grasslands, and man-made structures very easily. So mice typically make a burrow underground if they live out in the wild. We've then got squirrels. Lots of us will have seen squirrels before. And they adapt to their habitat by using their thick fur to keep warm, hiding in their nests for warmth, storing food, and using their intelligence. So squirrels are very, very clever animals. Lastly, we've got rabbits. So the rabbits' eyes are high up on their head, and they also have a very flexible neck, which allows them to rotate their head really easily. This helps them find food as well as predators. So because they can rotate and they've got those big ears for listening, it means that they've got a bit of a better chance of finding food and keeping away from predators. Now then, you definitely know the drill this time. I've got a woodland habitat in the centre for you, and those 4 boxes for you to jot down some of your favourite facts about a woodland habitat. Off you go. Okay, we are back, and your very, very last activity are some questions I'd like to have a go at answering. Now, the first one is why wouldn't we find a polar bear in the desert? So have a think as to why it wouldn't work. Why wouldn't we find a rabbit in a polar climate? Have a little think about that one. And the last one is why wouldn't we find a lizard in the Arctic? Okay then, well done for answering those questions. I look forward to seeing all of your answers on the portfolio section of Class Dojo. We'll see you later. Bye.